Welcome to another episode of Fly to Freedom. I have managed to persuade my husband Dave to come back on the podcast. And we're just going to be having a pretty frank discussion about recovery, life changes, and our relationship, and how the journey from living in an eating disorder, going through recovery, and going forward has actually affected and changed both our lives and our relationship with each other. So Dave, welcome back to the pod.
I'm honoured to be here as always, my love.
So lots to talk about today. So we don't really have any notes or anything. We've got a few questions in mind to ask each other.
We are
But
completely and utterly off grid today.
we're well, off-grid, ad-libbing
Off
anyway.
script. Yes.
Off script, yes. So there could be anything happen, to be quite honest. Now, we're hoping to release this episode on New Year's Eve. So Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year.
And look at 2025 being the year where you actually become your authentic self and stop the eating disorder being your primary focus. So, Dave, Right, you're on the spot now.
Oh, I love being on the spot.
One of the massive changes in me is that, now I'm going to go back. When I was in the eating disorder, and in fact for our whole marriage, because I was in the eating disorder for our whole marriage, I didn't really stand up to you particularly. I didn't express my need. And in some ways, you had quite an easy life because I did everything.
You're saying I've got an easy life now?
No, but you didn't really do any of the, or much. You did some. You didn't do much of the kids' stuff, of the house stuff, of the general day-to-day stuff. And that's all changed. And that change has been a learning process for you because it's been completely different. So when I started to say no to things and started to express my own needs, that must have come as quite a surprise to you.
Yes. It's been good though, because we have both learned together, and so many of the things that you have had to learn as you went through recovery, I have also had to learn to be able to support you and to be able to maintain my own sanity through recovery. And that was just one of them. I had to recognize that things were going to be different, and I had to understand that and accept it. It wasn't always easy. Of course, it wasn't. It was a journey for both of us. But I think we both determined at the when you started out on recovery that we were going to do it together, and I was going nowhere.
When I stopped people pleasing you and stopped doing things to make you happy that weren't right for me, how did that feel?
I think it's a tricky one, really, because I have always accepted you for who you are and what you do and everything. And yeah, this was another part of the journey. So I don't know. The very early stages, it was a bit of a shock, certainly. It was like, oh, okay, right.
Did you feel any resentment?
No, not really. I didn't feel any resentment. I think all the emotion of the very first part of recovery, when you actually admitted that there was a problem, and that after 40 years of thinking that I knew you, just realizing that actually that was all changing and everything had not been as I thought it had been. After those emotions had sort of not gone exactly, but after I dealt with those, everything else had to be about support. Everything had to be about understanding. And my own feelings about it couldn't really get in the way because otherwise that was going to damage your recovery.
Did you ever feel like I was being selfish when I was saying no to things you wanted to do and focusing on me? You are allowed to say yes, by the way.
Oh, I know I'm allowed to say yes. But genuinely, no, not really. We carved a different path together. Would you agree with that? Can you understand where I'm coming from with that? We carved a different path.
Yeah.
It wasn't the it wasn't the path, it wasn't the relationship and that we had had before. It was a different path. And actually, it was a stronger path. Yeah, you and I now are much, much stronger than we ever have been in the long time that we've been together. And that's been forged through this journey. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree. So part of the changes in me involved stopping searching for happiness externally and letting go of how to say this, letting go of things, achievements, body, and everything being the means to being happy, and starting to go more internally and starting
Intrinsic.
to feel much more gratitude for what I had rather than what I didn't have. How has that affected you? Has it changed your perspective on things at all?
I guess it has changed. I think recovery from an eating disorder and that type of thing tends to fan out around the people around you, and um, people around you tend to not fall in line. That's the wrong words, but they tend to soak up attitudes and emotions that the person closest to them has. And so some of the ways that you have changed, I have also changed in the way that I look at things. And yeah, we'll have chats and you'll have done some research or found some new information on something, and I'll go, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. People pleasing especially. Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, and I always used to hate the thought that somebody didn't like me or like anything that I'd done. And and that was a big
Quite a
part of
big
me.
fear of judgment, didn't
Yeah, and that's much less now, and that's come from the journey. I'm sure there are many other things as well.
so the ripple effect that when somebody heals themselves and it spreads to their wider circle, and then those people spread it to their wider circle, and so on and so on. Would you say that you have really seen that and felt that in action?
Oh God, 100%. Thank you for getting the right words there. I was struggling to find ripple effect, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, 100%. You know, the more you learn and broadcast that out, the more I learn and broadcast that out, and the more other people around me that I'll chat to, they learn new things, and it goes out from there. And it is a ripple effect, and it's far-reaching ripple effect as well.
It's quite amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredible.
We've actually even seen how it affects our children as well,
Yeah,
how they're more able to do what makes them happy with less focus on what other people think about it.
yeah, very much so. Very much so. It's an incredibly powerful thing, actually. Incredibly powerful. Especially now with social media as it is, and so just I mean this podcast is a classic example of a ripple effect. Yeah, your knowledge is going out to lots of people. They're then telling their friends and educating other people. It's a complete ripple effect. I love it.
And on that, or kind of along those lines, I used to live my life as actually as a victim to life circumstances, as a victim to other people's judgments, as a victim to life happened to me. And I didn't think I had any control over that. And through this process and exploring spirituality and connecting to, I guess, a higher power, um, and not seeing myself as a person that you just dealt with whatever life threw at them, I've stepped into now creating the life I want to create, focusing on the things that bring me joy, the things that make me happy, and being so grateful for that, and letting go of the things that don't serve me, and basically going from victim mindset to completely stepping into my power. Have you seen that, and has that affected your life?
So it's that classic thing, isn't it? You have become a person for whom life happens, doesn't happen to you anymore. And that is an incredibly powerful thing. And I think it's really important to recognize for anybody who is listening to this podcast that the amount of work that it takes to change your mindset around, but it's an incredibly important piece of work that has to be done, because you stop becoming a victim and you make life happen. What's that other phrase that we use, Julia? If you want something to change, something has to change, or something.
Yeah, nothing changes if you don't change anything.
That's right. And that's all part of that process. And yes, I have absolutely seen that in you, and I've seen that in myself as well. Wasn't really a victim. I've never been a particular victim because I've never thought that way. But we both certainly make life happen for us now, and that's part of the evolution that we've been through, for sure. Absolutely. And if there's one piece of advice I think I would give anybody out there who is supporting somebody else in the same position as I was with you, is to research on that particular subject and make life happen for you and for your loved one who is trying to recover from an eating disorder.
Thank you. Um, so one thing that is really quite challenging for somebody who's supporting somebody with an eating disorder is not triggering them, not saying the wrong thing,
Mhm.
not looking in the mirror and going, oh God, I need to get back to the gym, or oh, I don't like how I look. How did that affect you? And I mean, I know it was never perfect. There were times, and there will always be times where people get triggered.
I think rather than how it affects me, I think it would be more helpful to other people that are listening and watching this is to talk about some of the do's and don'ts that I learned the hard
Mhm.
way sometimes, about talking about food, about weight or exercise, and how to deal with that side of things. And I think I, on many occasions, accidentally triggered you when you were going through recovery. And
Yes.
they are comments that come from a place of love. They have the best meaning behind them, and you think you're saying something helpful, but in actual fact, you're doing exactly the opposite. So I think one of the things that I learned is the biggest thing is never ever make any observations whatsoever on somebody's appearance, their weight, their anything. Just stop making observations on other people. And it's fine to have discussions, but you need to do more listening than you do talking. And I think actually discussing weight is a complete no-no. One of the best things you ever did was to throw away your scales, the bathroom scales, gone. To this day, weight is not a subject that we ever talk about, and you have no interest in whatsoever for exactly the right reasons. So any thoughts of weight or diet or anything like that, completely take it out of the agenda. Never ever talk about those things if you're in a relationship with somebody with an eating disorder. Exercise, one of your things was exercise addiction. I've forgotten how many steps you had to do per day, but it was a hell of a lot of steps you had to do every day. And when you actually stopped doing that, it was obviously part of the recovery that you had to go through. But goodness me, I must never ever talk about the amount of exercise you do or don't do. And I know you found it very, very hard because I'm quite a physical person. I do a lot of physical exercise. You found my own training quite hard, didn't you?
Yes, I did, especially when you used to come back and talk about it all.
Yeah, yeah. Because from my point of view, I'd achieved something for me. If I'd gone out for a long run and I'd achieved something on my run, I would be feeling quite proud of myself for it. But coming back and talking about that triggered you and made your life harder. So you've got to be empathetic about that, and you've got to understand, and you've got to have control of yourself over what you talk about and what you don't talk about.
Yes. And the person in recovery also needs to reassure themselves and take responsibility for that, of the fact that just because somebody else is doing something doesn't mean it's okay for them.
Mm,
Because just because you were running and doing your exercise didn't mean it was okay for me to do that, because you were not in recovery from anorexia and I was. And therefore, the rules for me were different. And sometimes it's really hard to see that. And it's so easy to compare yourself to somebody else in just every aspect. um, like I used to compare myself to people who were recovering into smaller bodies than I was. But the thing is, I'm not them and they're not me. And we're meant to be all different shapes and sizes. And like sometimes the amounts I ate were bigger than the amounts you ate, in fact, quite a lot. And that could be really hard. But again, you didn't have a massive energy debt and I did. So it is the responsibility of the person in recovery to keep reminding themselves to keep staying in their own lane. And I know that's not an easy thing to do, but it is really important.
it's interesting you bring that one up actually, because I think one of the hardest points for me during your recovery was watching you forcing yourself to eat, even though you didn't want to. And even though the eating disorder voice was shouting at you, you're at the other end of the table. And obviously, as somebody who's not in an eating disorder, I would eat my dinner. And to start off with, I could not understand why it was so hard for somebody to just eat a normal plate of food. But the hardest part for me was watching the pain, the absolute abject pain on your face at the other end of the table, trying to eat some food. And um, we joke about it now at certain times and things, but actually encouraging you to eat a bit more, and dare I say it, the plane analogy. Here comes the plane. Actually making a joke out of it and trying to get you to eat some more. That was probably one of the hardest parts of recovery for me, and also for us as.
Yeah. I think where you've said there, like encouraging to eat more and not allowing me to almost get away with continuing to restrict, is actually really important. Lovingly calling someone out on their bullshit
Mm,
is actually really helpful, because love doesn't just have to be gentle, empathy, compassion. It can be tough love. And at times that is very, very definitely required.
it would be
And
very
I,
easy for you to just not. do take the recovered actions. It would have been very easy for you to not
Oh,
do
it's the
that.
easiest. That would have been the easiest thing to do. Absolutely. Um, but yeah, giving that tough love and saying, come on, that's not enough, or you need to rest and sit down, don't move.
I'll
And
walk
just,
the dogs.
yeah, just generally calling me out on my bullshit because it wasn't even my bullshit, really. It was the eating disorders
Absolutely.
and bringing in that tough love without being unkind, but being firm is actually a really, really important part of supporting somebody.
You've said a really important bit there. Still being kind.
Yes,
There are ways of handling those situations that are supportive, and there are ways of handling those situations which are destructive or less supportive at the very least. And understanding the sorts of things that are going through the person with an eating disorder's mind at that point, and being gentle but still being firm, are incredibly important parts of supporting them.
I think another thing that's really, really helpful in support is to not make everything about the eating disorder.
Yeah.
Not all conversations don't have to relate to recovery, don't have to relate to the eating disorder, because underneath, I was, and other people are still themselves. It's not all about the eating disorder. And there does have to be, or it's very helpful for there to be times where you're just not always talking about it. Like if you'd gone out and had time with a friend, if I'd come back and you said, yes, but did you eat? What did you have? But I just wanted to tell you that I'd actually had some nice time connecting with somebody. That would make me feel unseen.
And add to that the fact that understanding that for you, 100% of your time, your mind is eating disorder related. The ED voice is there 100% of the time, and you don't get any break from it. So actually coming home
Yes,
and getting challenged and quizzed by somebody supporting you is not helpful.
yeah, yeah. Actually, it's really helpful to do some things that aren't eating disorder related, like watch a film together, play a game, have conversations that don't relate around it, because that's what helps you start to feel like a person again. And trying to, or exploring ways of finding joy and happiness is so important because the more you can find moments that aren't eating disorder related and where you can actually feel some pleasure in life, strengthens you to keep focusing on that, to keep bringing those moments in.
Do you know what though? It doesn't just strengthen you; it strengthens you, the relationships around you as well.
Yeah,
Because if you're finding other things to do that are not eating disorder related, quite a lot of the time that involves finding things to do as a couple, or
yeah,
in whatever relationship you have with the person that's supporting you, and you quite often find completely new things to do, and that's growth in itself.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I wanted to talk about how you have felt about how much I have changed as a person because I am a completely different person. I was very quiet.
Meek and mild, Julia.
Yeah, and I'm so not anymore.
Oh no.
And I say what I want
Oh
and
yes.
no to things I don't want. And I make time for me and
Yeah.
I do things that could be construed as completely selfish to bring myself joy and things I focus on for me.
And I fucking love it. There you go.
Oh, well, that stopped the conversation quickly, didn't it? Right, well, you can ask me a question now then.
No, I think we do need to talk a bit more about that because yes, you are totally, 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 totally different from the old Julia that I fell in love with and I married and I had kids with and all that sort of stuff. You are a completely different person now. And yes, that transition and the anticipation of that transition was scary as fuck. It really was
Oh, you
terrifying.
really important thing there, the anticipation of that transition.
Yes, well, we had a discussion about
More
it, didn't
about that.
we? We had a discussion about that, and it didn't go particularly well at the
No, it
time
didn't. No,
because
it
I didn't
really
know
didn't.
what to say, and I was scared, um, because we both had to recognize that the Julia that was going to be coming is not the same as the Julia that was, and you asked me what I was going to think of that, and I had no idea what I was going to think of it. It could have
I
been a
seem
good
to
thing.
remember you didn't know if you'd like me.
Yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea what was going to come. I mean, what has come has been absolutely incredible, and I'm incredibly proud of who you are. But it could have not been have gone that way. Um, but I think for anybody else out there, the more support that you can give your loved one, the better the outcome is going to be.
I think the more you're open to those difficult conversations,
Good one. Yeah, good point. Very good point.
the more you're open to having them. Because for so many years, I would be silently resentful because I thought you should just know what I needed. You should just know what to say. And I didn't express any of my needs. And to be fair, you couldn't win anyway, because if you had somehow mind read me and knew that I was exhausted and needed you to step up and do more work, and as in like around the house and stuff like that, rather than leaving it all to me, then even if you'd done that, I would then have been resentful because I needed to be moving and doing all the time. And so I would have been resentful for you taking it away from me. So you couldn't have actually won in that moment. But I have, sometimes people say something and you can take it the wrong way. And you can make it mean something that wasn't intended. And that sort of thing, well, it still happens and it's always happened. I think that's just part of being human. And I used to get really upset about it. And now I'll say to you, when you said that, I thought this, and then I felt this. Can you explain further what's going on? What did you mean? And have I taken that the way you intended?
Yes, and we've always said this, but good relationships always come down to good communication, and you have become a lot more able to communicate your needs to me. You said it yourself. I don't need to say any more on this because you said it very eloquently in the first place. How on earth could I possibly know what your needs are unless you tell me what your needs are? And
Yeah.
you're able to do that now, which you weren't in a position to do back then.
Also, when I ask you what you meant by something, is
I
that
get
helpful
scared.
to you? You get scared. Oh, good. No, is it helpful to you that I ask for clarification for things now?
Well, I think the point is it helpful for you that you get me to clarify things?
Well, yes, otherwise I wouldn't ask.
There you go.
But is it helpful for you to know that perhaps I have misunderstood something and I'm asking for clarification?
It certainly prevents you getting the wrong end of the stick and being upset when that wasn't my intention to upset you in the first place. Yes, very much so. But that's the same with any relationship, whether it's somebody with an eating disorder or not. That's the same with absolutely every relationship under the sun.
Yeah. I'm going to go in a really random direction now.
Uh-oh.
And I want to talk about kind of circling back to what I said about creating your life for you. And I want to circle back to manifestation and actually focusing on what you want and then taking aligned action to get there. Now, this isn't something either of us had ever done or dabbled in or even believed was possible.
Mm,
And it still blows my mind every day that I can literally do what lights me up and create more of that for myself.
mm.
How has my learning about manifestation changed your life?
As a guy who never really had any thoughts of spirituality, whatever spirituality meant for a person, I didn't have any thoughts of it. I'm a practical, pragmatic kind of guy who just gets on and does stuff. You introduced manifestation into your life, and the ripple effect that we were talking about earlier starts to happen. And once you had learned manifestation as a technique, whatever I might have thought about it at the time, and I thought it was very woo-woo at the time, the amount of times that you demonstrated it and manifestation actually working blows my mind completely. I can't actually deny that there is something strange going on there. And yes, I accept that whatever it is, and I don't understand what it is, it works. So keep doing it.
How have you started to create the life you want from the changes we've both gone through together with my recovery and learning about that you can actually make life happen for you?
Well, I've changed my job recently.
Dave is now my bitch.
I did not expect you to say that. Not on the podcast, anyway.
Oh,
Yes,
um,
world, I am Julia's bitch. So I don't know. You can go into as much detail on that as you want to on what my role is, but I have changed my job, and that is allowing me to live much more of the life that I want to live, rather than the chained life that I was living. So I think that's probably one of the biggest changes that manifestation has had. And that's yet again, that's a change with on us rather than just me or you. Um, but it's a big one.
I might just start explain what you're actually talking about here.
Mm,
Um,
it would be a good idea.
so, as you all know, I'm a recovery coach and I have this podcast because you're listening to it. And I love the coaching. I absolutely love it. It completely lights me up. Having the privilege to support somebody on their journey to freedom is the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. And I enjoy every aspect of it. The thing I don't enjoy is doing all the social media, creating all the posts, doing all the designs and all of that sort of thing. I don't like the computer stuff.
The
It's
technical
not
stuff.
something, the tech stuff, it's not something that's ever lit me up. Lit me up, is that right, English? I don't know.
Good enough.
Never mind. And it's not something that has ever interested me. And it is something that really interests you, isn't it?
Yep.
You really enjoy doing tech stuff, computer stuff. And so we've now kind of formed a partnership where you do all the stuff I don't like, and that leaves me so much more capacity to do the coaching. And
You're able to help more people because
yes,
your time has been freed up from doing the stuff that you don't like in the first place by me doing it and me doing probably more of it.
yeah, and it's something that you really enjoy, and it gets
Hmm.
your creative skills going, and it also enables you to have a lot more free time.
Yes.
So
So and also I think I don't think it's a bad time. And considering this is going out on New Year's Eve, on the creative side of things, it allows us or you to get involved in other projects, other massively exciting projects that will all become clear in the early new year. We hope.
yes, yes, watch this space because
Mm.
we have some exciting plans afoot at creating a recovery space that's so much more accessible to everybody. Um, Whether you're in traditional recovery treatment, looking to be in recovery, whatever you want, we are hopefully we are creating a community that will benefit everybody. So yeah, that's really exciting stuff coming up. But that's also just another example of how we are manifesting the future we want together. And
Yeah, very much so.
that togetherness is a huge change brought about by recovery because honestly, we kind of coexisted alongside each other before. Would you agree?
To a certain extent. Um, yeah, I think we've gone through bringing up our kids and work and all that sort of stuff, same as every couple, and we are working together now, and yes, it does bring a lot more togetherness for sure. I've
Yeah,
just got to
which
remember who the boss is.
oh, by the way, Dave chose that title himself, that job title. It wasn't something I put on him.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing to point out. Yeah, that's Julia's bitch was my choice. Yes.
Yeah, he could have been social media manager or anything he wanted.
Yeah, but my role is much more general than that. So yeah, one title doesn't really do it. And yes, I have no problem with that title, and I embrace it fully, don't I?
You tell everyone. So, one of the ways that I think somebody can really, really help support somebody with an eating disorder is instead of focusing on food, weight, appearance, exercise, is actually to help celebrate their wins and to notice the things that make them a really great person, to notice how caring they were, or they love how determined they are to not listen to the eating disorder voices and to celebrate them when they are clearly struggling but sticking with it, and celebrate them for being strong and celebrate their bravery. Can you share some of the ways you helped me like this?
Um, well, just that, really. If you had, I don't know what else to add to that, my darling, because you've just said it all. Whenever you have a small win, whether that is not going out for a long walk and actually saying, David, today I'm actually going to sit on the sofa and do absolutely nothing but read my book. And for me to go, that's great, Dylan. Sit down, do nothing. That's the best thing you can do, and well done for actually taking that action. Or whether it is the numerous occasions, sometimes if we've gone out for dinner, sometimes if we've had dinner at home, and you have made something that the pre-recovery Julia wouldn't have touched in a million years. And actually cooking it, and I'd be like, "But you hate this," and you would say, "Well, I used to hate it, and
I
now
told
I need to learn to like it because I know it's good for me." Celebrating that sort of situation,
I
or
just
whether it's
jump in and say, I didn't force myself to eat foods that I genuinely didn't like olives, which are yucky.
fish.
Fish just makes me sick. Um, but foods that I told myself I didn't like pizza and bread and that sort of thing. Foods that I actually genuinely, well, I love actually, but I told myself for years I didn't like them. And so exploring those foods and eating them, not forcing myself to eat foods I genuinely really hated. Sorry, carry on.
And I think you told yourself that you didn't like them and that you weren't allowed them,
Yeah,
which was obviously completely wrong. Changes of mindset, um, changes in how you look at things, and I can't give you an example of that, but there are many. I'm quite sure there are very, very many where you have changed your outlook on something because the old outlook was an eating disorder outlook and the new outlook is a recovered Julia outlook. And I would tell you that I was proud of you for that. And yeah, those are the only ways that really that we as people who support other people with an eating disorder can really lift you up and celebrate you.
celebrating is so important because our brains absolutely love reward. And so the more we can focus on the things that are going right, the more we can focus on celebrating those things, the more of those things we get, and the easier it is for our brain to rewire. So
Yeah,
yeah, so
I think also for us in my role as somebody supporting you when you were in the eating disorder, actually sometimes we have to get out of the way and trust that you, and in your case with Victoria as your coach, trust that you were going to do the right thing. You would tell me what you were doing, and I had to sometimes just get out of the way and make sure that I didn't interfere and put that in jeopardy.
absolutely. And yeah, it's totally okay for, if you're in recovery, to ask the people supporting you to help you in certain ways. And if you're supporting somebody in recovery, to ask the person in recovery, what could I do that would be most helpful to you right now?
Absolutely. I go back to the first words that you said to me when you told me that you had an eating disorder. Your first words, and they will never ever leave me, was, "David, do not try to fix this. Do not
Yeah,
try to fix me."
yes.
And those words have stayed with me ever since.
The thing is, you have to allow somebody to do their own journey because you can't do it for them. You can't heal somebody. They have to do it themselves. Even as a coach, I cannot heal anybody.
No.
I'm absolutely 100% there for them, believing in them, supporting them, guiding them, but I can't do the work for them.
I'm naturally a fixer, and but you had to do the work.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
don't, if you didn't do the work, well, again, it comes back to, if you want something to change, something's got to change. and you had to do that work. And if you hadn't have done that work, then we wouldn't be sat here having this discussion right now.
No, we wouldn't, not at all. I can't imagine where we would be, but I don't think it would be in a particularly great place.
It wouldn't be in a great place at all. I'm fairly sure of that. So I celebrate you for that, my love.
Thank you. And I celebrate myself and I celebrate you for taking this journey alongside me. On that note, thank you all for listening, for being here again. And yeah, keep an eye on this space because we do have some really exciting plans coming up this year. And Happy New Year.
Happy
And
New
thank you,
Year,
Dave.
everybody. Keep going. To those who are in the role of supporting somebody with an eating disorder, keep listening, keep being patient, keep being supportive, keep being loving, and everything will turn out in the end.
Also, just want to add to that that if you are supporting somebody, it's also important that you look after yourself and support yourself. Don't sacrifice yourself because if you're draining your cup without refilling it, you haven't got anything left to give.
Yeah, 100%. Whatever that looking after yourself actually looks like, as long as it is not harmful to yourself, it is genuinely looking after yourself. As you said, my love, it's incredibly important to make sure that your battery is charged and ready to top up the batteries of the loved one that you're supporting if you need to.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Have a lovely new year, everybody. And yes, thank you.
Happy New Year.
Bye.